A very good morning to you, my dear students. Let us thank God for the gift of this beautiful day. In today's lecture, we will begin with a new topic in grammar, that is word formation. Now, in this, today you all will learn about the processes of word formation and what is a prefix. Okay, so let's begin, students. What is word formation? Now, a word formation is nothing but when you create a new word, that is known as your word formation. Now, for example, if you take an example over here, super is one word and human is another word, right? When you combine these two words, you get a new word, that is superhuman. So you are using these two base words to form a new word, right? So word formation is nothing but creating a word by adding up two or more different words. Okay, now these are you can say this is a compound word, right? Because you have used two different words over here to form one word. We will come to this types of word formation in our later slides, but word formation is nothing but you create a new word based on the base word that is given. Okay, so regarding this base words, we will come to it in our later slides. Okay, so in today's lecture you all will learn about the processes of formation. So these processes are affixation, compounding, acronyms, clipping and blending. Okay, so these 5 processes you all will study about in today's lecture. So let's begin, students. Okay, so as I said, we will study first about the base words. Okay, so what are base words, students? Okay, now if you take an example of a building, okay, so if you want to build a building, you require a base for it, right? Without base, you cannot build a building, right? So in the same way, in English, you also require base words to form other words. Okay, so here if you see, a base is a form of a word to which prefixes and suffixes can be added to create new words. Okay, now regarding prefixes and suffixes, what are they? You will come to know about it in the next slide. Okay, so in short, to understand what are base words are those words which can stand alone when the prefixes and suffixes are removed. Okay, it is still meaningful. Now here if you take an example, instruct. Now instruct is a base word for forming instruction, instructor and re-instruct. Okay, now if you see over here, this word instruct, okay, now this is the simplest form of the word. Okay, instruction you can break it down to instruct, but instruct you cannot break it down, right? This is the simplest form of the word. Okay, now here if you see, if you make use of this instruct as a base form, you can form instruction. So here in instruction, if I add ION at the end, it becomes instruction. So instruct is my base word and I am adding ION to form a new word. In the same way, if I add OR over here to instruct, it will become instructor. And here if I add RE over here, it will become re-instruct. So here what is the base of all these new words? Instruct. Okay. Next is second, happy. Now happy, I cannot break it down more. Okay, so happy is the simplest form over here. So which other words I can form? Using this base word, I can make happier, that is I'm adding IER. Now notice here, students, here at the end there is Y and here there is I. Now why do I write I in place of Y? It is because happy is an adjective, and if an adjective ends with y, you end your you end your word by writing I in place of y. Okay, IER or IEST over here. Okay, so in place of I am writing y. So here happier, so IER I have added. Again, happy is a base form here in happiest, but here I have added IEST, and here I have added UN, unhappy. Okay, so in all these three words, which is a base word over here, happy. Okay, so these are the base words, the simplest form of the word. Okay, so let's move on with the first process of word formation, that is affixation. So what is affixation, students? Affixes consist of prefixes and suffixes. So affixes are divided into prefixes and suffixes. So let's understand what is a prefix and what is a suffix. Now base word is clear, students, to you all. A word that can have prefixes or suffixes added to it. Okay, so for example, friend. Friend is a base word over here. Okay, now to a base word you can add a prefix or a suffix. Now prefix is nothing but a letter or letters. It can be a letter or letters that is added to the beginning of a word. In the beginning, when you add letters, that becomes your prefix before that particular word. Okay, so here I have added BEB, so it becomes be friend. Okay, so this, out of this friend, I have added a prefix over here, and after adding prefix, it becomes it becomes a new word, that is be friend, right? In the same manner, suffixes are added at the end of the word. Okay, prefix are added in the beginning, suffixes usually we have to add at the end of the word. Okay, so here friend is the base word over here, and after adding ly to this friend, it becomes friendly, right? So I have formed a new word, that is friendly. So ly, when I add at the end of the word, it becomes a suffix. Okay, now it can be it is not only that you have to add only ly for each and every word. No, there are different now see, whenever you are adding any suffix, see to that it is a meaningful word, right? Okay, it should have a meaning to it. Okay, so these are suffixes and prefixes. So suffix and prefix we add to a base word. So this was about affixation. The second one is compounding. Okay, second process of word formation is compounding. Now what do you mean by compounding? Now compound word is made up of two or more words. Now in the first slide we saw super plus human, superhuman, or super plus man, superman, right? In the same way, compound word is made up of two or more words. It's a process in which two different words are joined together to denote one thing. Now here flower is one word and pot is another word, right? These are two different words, but I am combining them together. Okay, I am joining these two words together to form one word, and this one word denotes only one thing and not two different things. But if you see here, if I take flower separately and pot separately, it will denote two different things. But if I add them together like this, that is only one thing. Okay, flower pot, it's one. But flower here, if you see, if you're taking it separately, it is different, and pot is different. In the same way, milk plus man becomes milkman. Now here I cannot say that this is you can say, I cannot take it as two different things. It is only one. Milkman means a person who delivers milk to your place, right? Okay, so your milkman is one, but your milk is different and man is different. So I am combining these two words to form only one word. So that is nothing but your compounding. So this is your second process. Next, third process, is acronyms. Now acronyms, okay, it is a process of forming a new word by combining the initial letters of the successive parts. The new word thus formed is called an acronym. It is pronounced as a word. For example, now at times you might get to see in some of your science textbooks, okay, you have this words like AIDS or POTA. Okay, now AIDS is a acronym for acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, okay, and POTA is an acronym for protection of terrorist act. Okay, now here what is being done in this acronyms, this is a this is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Now here in acronyms what happens is you take the first initial letters, the first letters of the words. Okay, so your A is the first letter, here you have I as your first letter, your deficiency D as your first letter, and syndrome S as your first letter. Okay, so you combine this first letters together and you form an acronym for that word. Okay, so AIDS becomes an acronym for this particular word. Next is POTA. Now in the same manner as I said, you take the initial letters. Okay, so protection P you take, of O, terrorist T, and act A. Okay, so it becomes POTA, POTA. Okay, so this is POTA as an acronym for protection of terrorist act. So these are known as your acronyms. Okay, now acronyms usually are written in bold letters. Next is clipping. Okay, now at times students, you all must have heard from your teachers that come on, let's learn maths today, okay, or let's go to the lab. Okay, these words you very often hear from your friends or from your teachers. Okay, now this maths word, it, now see, every now and then we don't make use of mathematics, we don't pronounce this word as mathematics, but we usually pronounce it as maths, right? It's a shortened form. So in clipping, a long word is shortened by cutting off parts of it, and a word thus formed is a clipped word. So here what we do is you make the short forms of these words, like mathematics, the short form for mathematics is maths, and professor, you take the clippings of the words. Okay, you can say 3-4 letters of those words and you form a short form of it. Okay, so prof we say it as professor, and for laboratory we call it as lab, right? So here these are the shortened form of the words like mathematics, professor, laboratory, and so on. Okay, so when we shorten the form of the word, long word, then we call it as a clipping. Okay, then next is blending. Okay, now this is a process in which two parts of two different words are blended to form a new word. Words formed in this way are called blends. Usually the first part of the first word and the last part of the second word are blended to form a new word. Okay, now for example, if you see these examples over here, what happens in blending? Two parts of two different words. There are two different words here, breakfast and lunch. Okay, so usually in blending what happens, the first part of the first word, now breakfast is the first word here, so you take the first 2 letters of this breakfast, and in the second word you take the last part of the second word. Okay, you don't take the first part but you take the last part of it. So here UNCH, so BRUNCH becomes brunch. So your brunch is a new word that is formed after blending these words together. Okay, so already breakfast and lunch we have blended to brunch. So when you say brunch, that means breakfast and lunch, right? Next is smog. Now smog is a blended word of smoke and fog. So smoke, the first part of the first one. Now smoke is the first word, so I'm taking SM from here, and the second word is fog, so I'm taking the last part of this. So SMO and G becomes smoke. So smog means smoke plus fog. Next is motel. Now what does motel stands for? Motor plus hotel. So I'm taking MO from here and TEL, and I'm blending it together and making it as motel. So motel stands for motor and hotel. Okay, so these are blends, you call it as. Okay, so this was about your processes of word formation. So let's see what are prefixes. Okay, now prefixes comes under which process, students? Affixation, right? So the first one we are going to study today, the second one we will study in our next lecture. So prefixes, as I said earlier, they are added before the base word, right? So when you add prefixes before the base word, usually they form antonyms. Antonyms are nothing but the opposite of the base word. Okay, so for example, if you take an example of the base word happy, okay, if I add un to it, it becomes unhappy. So happy is something that you are joyful. Okay, when I say happy means you're joyful, and when I say unhappy, when I add un to it, it becomes sad. That means when I add prefixes to the base word, it becomes the opposite of that particular word, right? So here are a few examples. If I add, there is this base word place. If I add dis to it, it becomes displace. Okay, so this is the exact opposite of place. Then if this is a base word possible, and if I add im to it, it becomes impossible. So possible is different and impossible is exactly the opposite of the word possible, right? Then regular, irregular, logical, illogical, right? 1 2 3 examples. If more I give, as I said, happy, unhappy, relevant, irrelevant. Okay, and then you can say graceful, disgraceful. So these, when you add these prefixes to this word, they turn into opposites. Okay, so this was about your prefixes. So this was all about your processes of word formation and the prefixes. I hope the processes and prefixes are clear to you. If you all have any doubt, you all are free to ask. Thank you, dear students.